Hello.
How are you doing?
Wait, I don't think this is working. Hello?
Yes.
Ah,
Are you
perfect.
outside?
Yeah, I'm at a conference, so I needed to.
I see.
Just,
Nice. What a skyline. Where are you?
it's Rotterdam. It's like another city in the Netherlands.
Yeah, it's on the it's a bit more near the other end. Hard to describe it because it's not south of it, but it kind of is. It's southwest.
It is south, yeah.
Yeah. The other well-known city in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands.
Yeah. Well, we also have The Hague. That's quite well known internationally, I think.
It is. Hi, Greg. Hi, Derek.
Hello.
Hi, Camille.
Oh, Martin, you're busy. It looks.
Hi.
What's the conference you're at?
It's an education conference. So
I see.
no software development.
They also do conference, I see.
They do. Although, I mean, the food is usually better at tech conferences. They have a higher budget.
Well, it depends on which conference you go.
That's true. Yeah.
If you go at the crypto conference, then there's money, especially now.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi Martin, where are you?
I'm at a conference. Well, I'm outside, but
Yeah, I'm also at a conference.
ah, yeah, but that looks nice and warm and light. But
Yeah.
this conference is actually in some kind of like concrete structure, so there's no connection anywhere inside.
Oh my gosh. We
Yeah,
can make it a short meeting.
Yeah, I
But
mean, I do have to drop off in 30 minutes but actually for another meeting, so I'll be here outside for at least an hour.
yeah, don't worry. Yeah, let's start right away. So okay. So let me remind you that by being here, we all agree to the GraphQL Spec Membership Agreement and to the GraphQL Foundation Code of Conduct. Let's do a quick round of introduction. In the order of the agenda, I'm Michael Stipe. I'm your host today.
I'm Pascal from Chili Cream.
Camille from the guild.
I'm Derek from Apollo.
I'm Steven with Netflix.
I'm Greg with Wayfair.
I haven't added myself to the agenda yet, so I guess it's my turn now. I'm Martin from Apollo.
Awesome. So just let me catch you up on what was open from the last meeting. I went to the TSC and asked to add Martin, Pascal, and Kamil as maintainers to the repository. It's more technical, so that they can merge and also manage, and also if I'm not there, also host the meeting. And I got the okay. So Lee right away said it's okay to add all of you. I'm going to do that over the next week. So you will get an invitation to the maintain group that we are creating at the moment. And then all of us can merge on both repositories or things. Technically, you could also directly commit into main, but don't do it. Just use pull requests. So it's more like we have the rights to do all of this, but
Never do such a thing as committing directly.
Yes. Yeah. But this also like distributes the work more and helps to run this more smoothly.
I only fixed the typo production down.
Yeah, we also started merging merging the pull requests that we have in the backlog. This will take a bit more time, so I managed to merge 3 because it's really bad how Git merges these text PRs, because it muddles them completely and it merges completely different things. So basically, what we have to do at the moment is pull this stuff, then copy the original document in, and then do basically fully manual merge. So it takes a bit, but I think by next week we will have everything merged, and then we have fresh, and then we can start iterating on that. So for this starting fresh, Pascal has made actually a list of things that are open that also aligns to what Kamil committed at some point with the Apollo Federation merge rules. Pascal basically went through them and marked them in a specific order. I think I'm passing over to Pascal to show that, and then we can take it from there.
Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so 1 second. Okay, later? Is that fine? I'm in a meeting. Okay, thanks. Sorry for that, but it's already late and the cleaning lady would like to clean, but I occupy room. Anyway, so there's a list of all the error codes that Apollo Federation has from the Apollo Federation docs. And there's a few that we are probably missing completely because they're very Fusion specific. There's rules that we have already implemented. Then there is rules that are covered by other rules. For example, Federation has a very generic default value uses inaccessible. We have more specific ones for inaccessible. Then we have rules that we currently are missing, and it probably makes sense to add them. It's quite a list. And then we have stuff that we like pushed aside. That's all the directive stuff, the interface object stuff. We don't care about this at the moment. Then there's rules which I don't know what they do. And then there is rules that are not needed in Composite schema. And then there is also a list of rules that are already removed in Apollo Federation. I included them here because if you read the list and maybe skim through, maybe you see something that in our case would actually apply or would make sense. So they are all in here. And the green ones are the ones that we already have. I've already made a pull request with all the external rules. And it's this pull request is open. Please read through it because it could be that some things do not make sense for us in the composite schema specification. Because, for example, there is something like external is unused. An external field is not being used by an instance of key, requires, provides, or to satisfy an interface implementation. Actually, for key, we use inputs. So you don't need external anyway. For provides, for requires, we also use input, so you don't need external anyway. You actually only need
no, I think you still need external because the field you're referring to still needs to be part of the schema. That's what external is for.
But,
yeah,
but
exactly.
only if you expose it. What Pascal means is if you specify it as an input, like with requires, then you don't have to specify it as an output. In
Because
Apollo Federation, you always would, in this case, also specify it as an output as we are passing it in over the entities field. But technically, you don't need to do that anymore.
But that's not the only reason it's in there.
Okay.
That's maybe something we should discuss. Like the reasoning there was that we wanted a sort of local representation in a subgraph of the expected type of a field as well, because that allows us to validate that expectation. So if, for instance, you have a key or a require that refers to an ID field, and you expect it to be a string, but it's actually an int somewhere else in the graph, then you want to be notified of that. And if you don't have a local representation of that field, there's no way to sort of encode that dependency.
But you have that with requires, because you inject it into a field, and the input types also have these requirements type-wise, right? If it's just input, like you still need it if you have it also as an output. If you design it also to be an output and to run through it provides, but in general, like in most cases in requires, you don't need it.
And for the case with provides, for the case where you have the requirement in a key, for example, let's say we have product by ID and SKU, or product by name and SKU, or something like this. You would in Fusion, in the composite schema specification, you would use provides to expose it with at external, because you have the root resolver where you can say provides. So you have the inputs, which are the keys, and then you can expose them through the resolver, through the path with provides. And then you can have the annotation. For example, you don't have SKU on the subgraph, so you can just mark it as external. And through provides, it's also provided from
that is actually slightly a different use case. My understanding behind the provides is that there could be multiple paths within the subgraph to resolve things, right? And one of the paths with the provides, it means that it can be locally resolved, right? But all the other paths within that subgraph to reach that point actually are not locally resolvable. And that's why you have to mark it as external. What you're describing sounds a little bit different though.
No, it's exactly this. When you have a resolver where you, in some context, you know the SKU of a contact of a product. You mark, you add provides with the SKU field, and then on the product type you say that the SKU is an external field. That's exactly in the composite schema specification as is the only use case for provides and external. External doesn't have another use case because we use inputs instead of the object, the any mapping that we have in Federation, right? So there's actually a single use case at the moment, at least, for the two. And that's the reason why the rule is slightly different, right? We do not need to verify key. We don't need external this error in case it's not in a key or it's not in requires, because we don't have that use case in the composite schema specification.
I think that makes sense, but I'll have to think it through.
Yeah. I mean,
yes, that's why we bring it up.
Yeah.
Pascal and me just discussed this like for an hour. Came to this conclusion. But we also are not 100% sure if that is true, and maybe there are some insights that you can also add.
The main difference between the composite schema spec and Apollo Federation in terms of external and provides is that external only has a single use case at the moment, and it's really tied together with provides. These two directives only can exist together, right? Because there is no other use case for external at the moment, at least. So that's why
I'm not sure it's needed, but the original use case is still valid as sort of double bookkeeping, like marking the ID field on a type as external with a certain return type, and then mapping that to an input type gives you an extra check that you're actually mapping something to a field of the right type.
Yeah,
but that would be one possible.
Yeah. But you're already double bookkeeping, right? With the type, with the input type. This is then triple bookkeeping, if you think about it, because you're stating the input type, and the input type has to match the output type. So the expectations have to match here already. You can then
but the issue is that the type you're mapping to has to be known locally at the subgraph level. So if you're mapping, for instance, an input field or an input argument ID to a field ID on a type, that field ID has to exist locally. And that's like currently where you would mark it as external, and then the same goes for require.
In the composite schema specification, you would have to, if you want to use this, you would have to annotate it anyway with provides the resolver, because it doesn't exist locally, right? So then you would have both. You would have
no, I'm not talking about provides here. I'm just talking about require or key.
But let's say you have an input. You have an input. The SKU is the input of product by SKU, whatever.
Yeah.
This is the key. The SKU is the key. Now, what you have in Federation is you would say that the SKU is external and is also in the key. In the composite schema specification, you would have the same annotation, but additionally, you would have on this path you would have to provide, because only this it's like provide works, right? You have a resolver where this path can provide something for the next type, which could be the SKU field.
Yeah, the question is just this. Like, this is also a feature. Like, you could have a type that doesn't have to specify it as an output, which means the graph is more consistent. Like, you could query it actually without running into errors, because you don't state it as an output field, as its only need on the input side. I mean, we can bake it in that you can kind of triple bookkeep, so you can put it there. But if you put it there,
I don't think we have double bookkeeping without it. That's my point. Because we don't have the type of the field encoded anywhere if it's just in the input argument and mapped to an output field that's defined somewhere else, not in the current subgraph.
Yes, but I thought of that also as kind of bookkeeping of the type, because you define with the input the expectation of what this type is.
That's true. That's another way of looking at it. Yeah. It's definitely more concise to leave out the need to add the field as external.
Yeah, and it allows you to like bring in services that were not explicitly designed for the composite schema spec, and just say, okay, this is the requirement. I can map it to that.
That's a good point. Yeah. I think this all makes sense, but I still need to think about it.
No decisions today. It's just about putting it out there and letting you all think about it. Could be totally wrong, but it's good if you let it, even if it's 2 or 3 weeks. Just think about it, and if something comes up, just bring it up.
There's one part of this rule or this error that I have no idea what it is about, and it's or to satisfy an interface implementation. That's something. Is this related to interface objects?
I'm not entirely sure. My guess would be that if you're, that doesn't really make sense, but if you're implementing an interface, but you're not implementing all of the fields locally, to satisfy that interface implementation, you would still need to add those fields, but then you can mark them external. So you signal that they can't be resolved in that subgraph. But the usual way of dealing with that would be to like leave those fields out of the local interface definition. I would think, but maybe I'm missing something here.
I'm thinking this might have been added before interface object was a thing. So that's a workaround to get that working. I'm thinking out loud, but yeah.
I don't think it's directly related to interface object though. I mean, it would occur even with normal interface.
Yeah, I think it predates the interface object, I think. But,
I know in our graph, which is like Fed1, basically, there is a use case around that where in order to make sure your interfaces match, subgraphs use external on types.
Yeah, so you define the interface in a single place, and then the subgraphs can mark parts of it external. Yeah.
But it could be in Fed 2. Maybe it's not relevant anymore.
I will add it as a note, and then we can tackle it once we are in the stage of where we actually have interfaces.
Actually, I added the error messages and example code for all those error messages that you mentioned, that you're not sure if we should add it to the composite working group or not. What are those?
I think
why?
you have a PR open, right? Comments.
Yes, but also added it on Pascal's PR as comment.
Yeah. Like, and just as an info, so your PR is on my list to merge, so should be in next week.
Okay, I see. You have the examples there as well. That's perfect. Then we already have a test suite. Very good.
I wouldn't call it a test suite, but
That's all we need. We're basically done. That's good. So as said, these are open. I think we should all take time to review what's open once it's merged, because otherwise it's a massive pain to do. It's a pain to merge and it's a pain to review. I think these are kind of covered. As said, it's we have enum value mismatch, inaccessible. We just have different rules for this, but it more or less does the same thing. There's many things which are open and which we should do. And most of them, I think, are clear. Like, for example, no queries if you have only inaccessible fields or only inaccessible children. So these are quite easy, I believe. There's a few in there that you actually have to think about a bit, but usually it's fine. There's also a few that we have to think about. For example, the invalid graph call. A schema is invalid. It violates one of the rules of the specification. That's probably what we would do in the in the subgraph validation, in the step before the pre-merge. So we just validate that everything is in place. That's probably this validation rule. So yeah. Exactly. Now, one thing, actually, talking about external, one last question there. External fields have to match, have to be strictly equal to the other subgraphs, right? So no,
I think that's true. Yeah,
But
I'm not sure how it deals with nullability, but it might allow.
Exactly. That's my because Pascal and me, like, we had a discussion on that. It could be like if the external field is nullable and the non-external field is required, that should actually work out. I don't know if you want to make at this complexity, but it should be possible.
The thing which is a bit weird, if at the moment it's very strict in the specification, that I think we should just go with this for now. We can loosen it later. The reason why it's a bit weird is that, for one thing, you now have a schema and you don't follow the least strict version of the merged schema, right? Because you would have a nullable field, so that means that the output is nullable. But now when you have external on it, you would still ignore this field for the nullability check. If we make it 100% strictly equal, then we have a bit of a schema evolution issue, because you would first have to remove all the externals and provides to then make the field non-nullable, to then add them all back. So that's something that we have to think about. Derek?
Derek?
Yeah, I think this is also, as we discussed, the external kind of like only applies to provides in this case, right? So in this case, I'm not sure how big of a deal it is, because, well, this was specifically used, I believe, for requires when you have those fields, and then the question then becomes, okay, it's a distributed thing, right? So what if it actually comes back as null or not, where you can actually use it as null or not? So it's kind of, I think it leads towards more of a requires usage, which we no longer have the case with at require in arguments. but maybe there is something still on the provides, but provides is well, it's a locally resolvable versus across the the super graph. So I'm not sure if that's really a big deal or not.
Okay. Good. Yeah, I think we'll figure it out because it's a lot of text, but most of them are quite simple. These rules. So let's see what we need. I think this one is the most critical one, that we actually know what we want to use. What's that? Okay. That we actually know what we want to use external for, and then we could. Yeah, so I think the rules which I like to focus on, if we still have time, are the ones here, because I have a few questions what they actually mean.
I have to drop off in a few minutes, but others might be able to continue.
That's fine. Just sign off. But I will start with the most difficult one, because maybe you have an insight that the others don't have. What is external collision with another directive?
Oh, I think I covered
I
that.
think that might be another directive that has a similar name but a different definition. Is that what it does, or?
Yeah, I think so. I don't have like a reproduction for it, so I cannot tell really.
Yeah.
Just guessing.
The description is the external directive collides with other directives in some situations.
It's very vague. Yeah. I can see if we have some internal like information on that in an old like Slack thread or something. But it's definitely vague, and I would think that if it's what I think it is, that would be a more like general issue that we need to tackle. Like if there's a similarly named directive definition, and this might actually predate the core, like the link directive, maybe. I'm really not sure. We'll need to check.
Yeah,
but the link directive is designed to like deal with these situations because it namespaces and versions the directive definitions.
This is true, but I started this discussion as a separate, like at the moment, the assumption on GraphQL foundation specs is that there is no namespacing.
Yeah.
So everything is root. That's why I started offering the composite schema spec last time, just as an opening, the discussion on namespacing. At the moment, we just assume this problem doesn't exist. I know it exists, and I know why Apollo did it. And we also will need it for the ability that providers of a gateway put at other versions of a directive. So
yeah,
we're definitely going to tackle it. Don't worry about that. Just no. Just in this moment, it doesn't exist in this version. Like we have to find a way to handle namespaces, and I don't know where this discussion goes. That's just why we thought to take it out of the current iterations, so to say.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But we will need to tackle it before we release the spec. I definitely see that.
Yeah.
But it's a very complicated discussion we will have to have, and I think it has to go into the core.
Agreed.
Because there's so many.
See you next week.
Yeah, bye.
Good luck.
See you next week.
Okay. So let's try the luck with the next one. This one is also super generic. The interface object usage error, which is a bit weird because we can also, just delay it, then we don't have the problem. But I was just wondering, there's validation rules about interface objects, right? With all these overrides and things like this.
So Stephen actually linked to where that first exception is being shown, right? And yes, that's actually specifically looks for provides an external on a given field. So that looks like this is
So-
actually specifically on the field sets, actually validates field sets on those composite
Right.
type.
So that means it checks if you use external and provides on the same field.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Okay, that makes sense. That is indeed a use case. So let's put the link even in here. Awesome. Then we have the interface object usage error. I will just move that up as something that we care later about. But again, this is a very generic error message. Like there is an error with the interface object, but there is already a lot of rules that validate this. So we'll have to see. Speaking about interfaces, we also do not allow keys on interfaces. So I guess that's also something that we have to look at later, which is only supported by linking to Federation 2 or 3 later. We don't, right? Or am I wrong now? There is
So
no, there, in the composite schema at the moment, we don't have any keys on interfaces or don't have it planned.
That's
they
correct.
don't have a meeting right now, right? They don't have a meeting.
I think the idea was that they inherit down to the object types that implement them, right?
Yeah, so here what the reason why this was actually added there is so some folks started adding like the keys on interfaces for consistency reasons. So they show it's on interface and then you have a key on the type itself. Having a key on interface, I'm not sure if actually even makes any sense without an interface object. But I know folks were using that. To have that consistency there for since we're not tackling interface objects right now, I don't think you need that.
I think
But
the idea was that if you define it on an interface, all your objects have to implement it. So and it kind of makes sense because if you think about it, you could have a entity resolver that returns an interface. If the types all have the key as well, then this should be fine. It should be an option to use this as a fetcher, right?
fair enough. Yeah, so the error is so in v2.3 we've added interface key not on implementation. So key is defined on an interface type, but is not defined or is not resolvable on at least one of the interface implementations.
Yeah, then let's move it down like this.
So it's actually a different error. Key not on implementation. Key unsupported. That was the different one.
Yeah, it was key unsupported. So this one is not this. We don't want this one, but we want the key not resolvable, right?
There's a key not on interface error. So this is one for the one that we would be using for like the inheritance of the keys, right? So that the other one is specifically about the inheritance.
Yeah,
So on the
interface
yeah,
key not on interface implementation.
Yeah.
Key not on implementation. This is the one. That's the one we want. That's good.
Yeah.
That's in the to-do list. Then one thing that we have to think about is the invalid federation subgraph. And it indicates that the schema provided for an Apollo Federation subgraph is not a valid subgraph schema. The question here is a bit, what does that mean? Is this graphical wise? Like there's a syntax error?
It's gateway error, I believe, and it belongs to the query planning logic. So you get the supergraph, but it is invalid, so you throw that error. But during the composition, it's not really a thing, I would say, because it's just like the composition outputs the supergraph. So by definition, it's valid, right? It's just that the consuming part of the supergraph can yield it.
Okay.
And it's about the supergraph, yeah, not the subgraph. So yeah.
So no composition error. I have to do this like this, otherwise we'll get it. Yeah, this one, the next one is also a bit, I was just wondering, key invalid field types. I think there's also one for provides, but the value passed to the field arguments of a key directive is not a string.
Oh, it's about the key definition. So if you provide a definition, like if you pass, let's say, a Boolean to fields arguments, it will yell at you that, you know, it's supposed to be a string.
But that's
Yeah,
just,
so
that's
it's invalid GraphQL. So like if it's the fields, the selection field set, right? So fields true or fields one is invalid, right? You have to have a string there. But this is it's actually a scalar that, you know, but
Mhm.
yeah.
I
pass it.
see, it's because it's a custom scalar. We have the field set scalar there. The selection map, the field set, there's another scalar that we have to introduce. But yeah, I agree. That makes sense because it's not a string scalar, it's actually a custom scalar. So it could be, we have the same thing for the selection map. So we actually need the same thing also for, I believe it's still called is, right? Let's write that down. Then this one, merge directive application on external, is a merged directive applied.
It's about inaccessible and a tag. And by merged, it means that like the tag directive in Federation and inaccessible, they are passed through the subgraph to a supergraph. So
Yeah.
then they are merged and then you get the error. So you cannot use inaccessible and a tag on external, right? We're talking external, yeah. Whenever you see merge, then it's probably this like inaccessible and tag.
That's the one. Yep.
So in our case, it's internal, right? If I remember correctly.
I think they still get inaccessible.
Okay.
Let me try to phrase this in a sentence.
By the way, in the PR, you have the, I already covered those to
Okay.
see the examples.
Well, the question would be then internal also, I think, would apply to this, right? Because internal
Yeah.
would, yeah.
And I think inaccessible is like subgraph, local to subgraph, right?
No, inaccessible is the global, internal is local.
Okay. Okay.
That's the same one we already have then. This one is also, is this provides on a non-object field. Is there a reason why that's not possible on an interface? Or is this just a restriction?
Oh, it's about, it's just that like if you use a field that is a scalar, so the scalar is an output, let's say a string, and you apply provides on it, it cannot provide. It's already like, you know, it expects the exactly.
Yeah, it does make sense on a scalar, but it's specifically the error says it's not an object type.
Oh,
Yes.
it has to be composite.
Composite
Yeah.
type.
Yeah, how you do, yeah, well, yeah, that's the error is misleading, but it has to be, it cannot be a primitive scalar. That's
Yeah,
what I
that
mean.
makes sense. I think that there is even a provides invalid fields. I think there is one for scalar, but I will just move it up here. Provides. We have provides missing external, that makes sense. Okay. Good. Then This one provides unsupported on interfaces. That's the reason why the upper one was probably the composite, not the composite type, but the object type. Is in the newest version of Federation, is this already supported? Is this out of date?
I'm looking at it.
Yeah, checking. No, in all of the versions I see it's being incompatible.
Oh, so this is actually, I think this is,
I see.
so this is
not-
actually, if you have an interface,
Yep, I know what you mean.
if you try, if you have an interface, what does actually mean that you're gonna have a provide fields on an interface doesn't naturally.
It's not
result,
about,
you need
it's
a
not about
complete
Yeah.
interface.
resolver that returns an interface. It's about on the interface having a field which provides something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So this
the
is,
interface itself is not executable, right?
Yeah,
And but the confusing part is this yet.
well, because
Well,
that was maybe,
technically-
I think the intention was maybe in the future it would be, but
Well,
Uh,
it's probably the
actually-
same. You could argue it's the same behavior as key. It would inherit down to all the resolvers, and all the resolvers would have to implement it, right?
I don't think so. I don't think so because the provides is specifically about the query optimizations, which I'm not sure you should have those global optimizations. It's more so on a given subgraph, you would decide whether there's this optimization that you can reach it to this provides or
Yeah,
in the interface. That's kind of like, I don't know.
yeah, yeah. It's probably different. You're right, because you actually need to have the key on the interface if you want to have some batch resolver thingy. A batch entity resolver where you have multiple entities that you can fetch through one resolver, for example, nodes, right? But you don't need this for provides because there we are in the query planning anyway on the object types and not on the interface types. So yeah, on a interface. Okay. Good. I think that's all.
It looks like we talked through the open questions. I think those all kind of explained. Or do we need to drill into more of those or?
No, I think they're good. They're good. As I said, what we postponed is directive and override. And let me skim through them quickly. That's fine.
Well, so I got a question about the no queries.
Yes.
Because I was wondering about this, and I don't know whether there should be a use case or not for that. Maybe there should.
It's not allowed.
Well, it's not allowed, but well, so here's the use case, right? So some folks, they want to test some stuff out, okay? They don't want to put that query into production yet, but they do want to have it available in their graph, and I guess that type merging, and the question is, why would you want to merge it to the super graph? I don't know, but folks do weird stuff, right? Is that something that we would like to support, that they would have an accessible query that is in the graph, you can still test it out or something, right? But you know, you cannot, if you put it into super graph, that will actually say, well, I don't have any queries because it's inaccessible.
Yeah, the problem is that the resulting graphical schema is invalid.
Invalid. Yeah,
So-
because you cannot jump to this type anymore, right? And
No, it's
you don't
more
get-
like no queries is like it's not the subgraph that is not allowed to have queries because we mark them as inaccessible. It's more that the merged supergraph has to have at least one public field.
yeah. But
Otherwise,
you already have a super graph and you want to test something out, and for some reason you want to merge it. But I'm wondering, why would you want to merge it?
I mean, you can, right? You can merge it. It's just that the merged supergraph is not allowed to have.
Oh, none of the composed subgraphs. Okay, I thought it was actually within the
Yeah,
subgraph.
this is
super graph level. The super graph, yeah, totally.
yeah. That's just another it's a standard graphical validation
Yeah.
that
On the
we
super graph level, yeah, that's fine. I was thinking more on a subgraph level, like when you have the inaccessible, that's actually, it's not, once you try to compose it, actually cannot really add it to the super graph because there's nothing there. It's still can hit it locally and test it out. But I'm thinking, what would be the use case actually that you want to merge that in to the super graph in the first place?
Yeah. Yeah, these ones are also a bit weird. As a supergraph schema defines a type with the name mutation while also specifying a different type name as the root query object. That's also weird.
Yeah, so this is about renaming of those the root types, right? And because
Yeah.
people can rename those, and I guess for simplicity, that was added in there.
But I wonder, does this really have to be a validation issue? Like, if I really want to have my query root type be named my query, why shouldn't I be allowed to have query as the name of a type?
And actually, I think those are actually supported now. Mutation used.
It does get kind of weird though if you have a bunch of subgraphs that have different, like would that affect the like the query planner would have to know like what their, well, I don't know, maybe it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, the merging logic, yeah, needs to know what their query type is called. I mean, I guess in theory, it can do that, but it's weird because then you're merging my query with query. So you're merging, across subgraphs, you're merging types that have different names. And
Yeah, I mean,
actually,
if
it actually might be fed one thing, because I think you can now, because I've seen some folks having a type mutation, whatever, right? You have genes and mutations, and I think fed2 allows it. I think this was potentially fed1 thing. I can double check.
that would be great, because how I read this mutation, this rule is actually, it's fine to have a different name as long as you do not have another type in the same schema called mutation, which is not the root type. It seems to be a very specific. This could even be implementation detail that leaked through, right? But I will put them on hold for
Yeah,
now.
so if you have a schema having my mutation, right, and that returns a gene with a mutation, that actually would fail this. But I think fetch2 might actually work.
Yeah, it's this one. So basically yeah. I mean, the problem with this is then you like have a collision with the, mutation type in other subgraphs. So I think disallowing that should be like enforced. And yeah, it's like people, they want flexibility, but then what do you do with like type mutation, right? Or type query, you like merge those, you can't. So then you have to have like a composition error for that like the meaning of the query type is now different and there's a collision, right? Which is like, I don't know, it's fine, we can do it, but like for me, we should just enforce the, specific name for the query. That's it.
I think we allowed it if you have it the same root type across all subgraphs. So if you have the root mutation in one place, you would have to have it everywhere for it to work. I think I'm not sure if that's true, but I can verify it. But I agree, keeping it simpler right now, restricting it right now to do not allow that makes it simpler.
So we restrict it further to where your query type has to be called query and mutation has to be called mutation. And why in the world would anyone need to do it differently?
That's where I'm at the moment, right? Why would you want to rename the root types if you wouldn't have a type which is called like this? Like, I don't know, you build a SQL management API and you really want to have the type query in there. The question is a bit, do you want to rename your root type or just say that this is a SQL query? So
yeah, also this
does allow you to do that, right? The GraphQL spec does allow you to do that, but I think starting with the restricting it and making it relaxed afterwards makes it simpler. But
I'd love to see like why GraphQL even allows that. Like, was there some specific use case?
plus once we have like different names of the types across all the subgraphs, or like even a different one, let's say my query, then what should the gateway expose? Should it be query or should it be like my query? You know what I mean? Then it's confusing. So then it adds the complexity. And I don't really
So I think
like it.
I believe the spec, the root fields are still named the same. So still query mutation subscription. You can just rename the type that backs it.
Yep.
But Federation, at least how Apollo Federation works, is they merge under the standard naming of root types. So if you expose a field query that's named foobar, whatever, it will, whatever's in it will get merged into the query type in the supergraph schema. That's how Apollo Federation works today. And so you have to do something like that because you can't expose multiple query fields. And so you'd have to throw away whatever their custom type name is anyways.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah,
feel
that
like
makes
for
sense.
Federation, you may as well just enforce naming it all query. I understand that deviates from the spec. If we want to support it, fine. But in the end, the supergraph's going to have to be type query anyways. I don't see another way around it.
Yeah, that could actually be, let me read this again. Yeah, that could actually be one of the that could actually be the issue. That the supergraph schema will always have type mutation and type query, which leads to the issue that you would have a type collision anyway in the supergraph. Right. Let's see. I mean, it's really, really easy rules anyway to implement. So I'm actually also in favor of this. Why should you have?
Yeah. And then that's like starting out more strict, and then if there's some use case for where they have to be renamed, someone can open an issue and make it more flexible.
I think the requirement right now is that they have to match everywhere. So the same type name, right? So if you call it my query across your 100 subgraphs, that should work, I think. But I don't think we should complicate that. And keeping it saying that those root types should be query, mutation and subscription just makes it so much simpler than actually trying to keep rewriting that. And that is the use case that 99% of the user, 99.9% users are never going to rename those.
Yeah, in the end, I don't know that it, like, ultimately renaming them, I don't think it actually impacts the client experience at all. Because I don't believe I don't believe the root query is a valid location for type name. So you can't even access the type name of whatever you name this custom query type anyways. It's completely hidden from the client. So there's sort of some organizational need. I don't know what that would be. I can't identify any value in actually renaming it. Maybe there's some out there. I don't know what the spec originally thought in planning that, but it's completely hidden.
As Pascal said, you could want to have a situation where your schema have a query type for whatever reason, right? Or you're working with biology and you have mutations, right, on the genes, right? Those are words, so technically you could use them in some specific situations, but it's fairly rare, I would imagine, that that's the case.
Yeah, and also the built-in directives you would collide anyway. So there could be a use case where you really want to have your custom specified by directive, but there is already one. So okay, good. Yeah, I think that gives. I think we can wrap up. The other rules are pretty clear here. Otherwise, I will just send a message to the Slack channel, and over the next couple of weeks, more and more rules will trickle in. If you want to help out, just let me know. Then you can, or just let us know so that we don't do the same work twice. It's already happened with the validation rules that we have implemented now. When you suddenly have 2 pull requests with the same name, then at least 2 persons are pretty pissed off. So just send a message when you start working on a rule into the Slack channel. And for anyone which listens in, just open an issue on GitHub, then we know who's working on what. Cool. Does anyone has anything else that we want to discuss in the last 5 minutes of this meeting?
Well,
Okay.
there was this. It's related to the testing stuff that I mentioned, right? Maybe to the testing queries and all that stuff that folks maybe have some opinions on. So basically, there's some folks would like to try out the new shape of the queries and in production supergraph. How it looks like is, well, single graph to integrate with that they can run with it. I'm not sure why I would push stuff to production that's not ready yet, but that's one way to do it. But like if you use the lookups or entities or any of that, that means it's technically a fair game for query planning to use it, right? To resolve it. So like if you extend an entity with new stuff, well, no, if no one's using that new stuff, that's fine. But there could be other parts of it that are already exposed across, right? So wondering whether we need or whether there should be a mechanism to indicate, well, yes, this is part of the supergraph, but no, don't use it for the query planning yet. But
that would be the same. I mean, just that's also something that would apply at the moment to Apollo Federation, right?
yes,
That I want to dismiss the idea or anything, because Federation doesn't have it. But that's
no, that's why some folks were asking about like whether they can do that. That's why I'm bringing up this idea, because it's like I wouldn't push something to production that's not ready there, right? And especially you know, this that can, you know, that could be used for planning for something else, and you're not expecting the traffic there, right? Because well, you're not adding new stuff that would be in the queries, right? But technically, through some paths, you could query it so it actually hits that subgraph, right? And
feels a lot like what they need is feature flags, and I think that with tag, feature flag, and the Apollo HTTP implementation, all these kind of additions, which basically build on top of the composite schema specification, could just be some sub-specification.
Well, kind of, but because if you add an entity, right, and you have shared entity parts, right? So let's say entity has 2 keys, right? And you added a new field that is new, no one's going to be using it, but you have 2 fields there, 2 different keys, right? So technically, your query planner could use that graph to jump from one key to another, right?
Yeah, I think it's subspecification.
So that was the concept of non-resolvable key in Federation, right? Over here we would have internal lookups that you wouldn't expose those, but I'm thinking whether still that would be kind of related to that or not. But
yeah, I'm not sure. I think we can pick this up also next week in the meeting, because we anyway have to at some point define a bit what goes into the specification, what goes into sub-specifications, because there's so much that you can do, and as with Federation and the concept of it, that we could theoretically like have proper sub-specification of certain features, and then the gateways could say that we actually do support stitching, we do support federated REST APIs, or we do support federated gRPC APIs or whatever. And it's just a specification that you have to implement.
Yeah.
And for feature flags, because that's something that I think Wundergraph has an implementation of feature flags already, where this would also be really nice, that you can actually say, you know, for this tenant, I want to enable this feature flag, so the schema actually changes or whatever. And then you could work with feature flags, and you wouldn't need the concept built into the core specification of having non-resolvable.
Yeah, I don't think it should be core specification per se. I'm thinking about the future state. So like whether there should be some mechanism for like saying, hey, query planner, don't take that into account yet. Skip that for planning, right?
I've talked to many customers already which require feature flags as they have multiple teams and they don't
Yeah.
want to interfere with each other. I mean, they eventually will anyway, but that they just want to not publish something on the public API until the feature is ready. So
Yeah.
that's something that is definitely a hot topic. So it depends a bit on where to place it.
Sounds good. Yeah, food for thought. This is like last 5 minutes, right?
Like
That's a big topic.
we don't have enough food already.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think then let's close it. Michael is already off. I think that was a very productive meeting. Keep your eyes closely on the pull requests. There will come a couple with new rules. Have a read and see if you agree on it. Awesome.
Well, talk to you later. See you.
Bye.
Bye.